approved it. Thanks for having me tonight. Nighttime mayor, nightmare. Well, my husband calls me a nightmare. That's our inside joke. But the term actually originates, this concept of nighttime management started in Amsterdam in the early 2000s. And it was a way they literally elected a night mayor, or a Burgemeester is what they called it, to represent these nightlife businesses who were having legislation, codified city rules put against them by people who work 9 to 5 and aren't there to advocate on their behalf. So while the term, and where we get the term here in the United States, derives from that, the position has since evolved, the terms have since evolved. And I'll kind of point out to you the differences that what we do here in the United States and colleagues like mine in the United States and our differences. Some of them have different titles, like I'm the nighttime mayor, and that's just something that works for us here in the Iowa City downtown district, because it is a way to market ourselves as a very dense, walkable entertainment district with a lot of things to do. Other people in my position have to cover a whole city with a couple pockets, a couple different neighborhoods of nighttime entertainment. And so therefore they cover the whole city. So to clarify, I am not an elected official. I am hired by the Iowa City Downtown District. I'll kind of talk through some of those differences about where I'm housed in my position and other colleagues like mine in the United States. So at the base of it, my goals, my job, what I've been tasked to do is I'm here to cultivate, sustain, and promote our arts and nightlife culture and be that liaison, whether that's business to business, visitors to businesses, hotels to businesses, universities to businesses, to city, state, county, regulatory agencies that maybe I've already talked to, I've already interfaced with. I can help them speed up their processes, whether it's like permitting, pointing them in the right direction for resources and information about how to run their business within the legal eyes of the law and have a great, robust nightlife establishment in our city. So, where are the other ones? Right now, here in the United States, we took on this nighttime management, the trend of nighttime management. I don't think it's going away, it's going to keep coming. About a decade old here in the United States. We here in Iowa City started this in 2017. The oldest one is technically San Francisco. So we have San Francisco. Sacramento just started a nightlife office last year. Seattle, Austin, Texas. New Orleans just started one last year. Atlanta just opened one last year. Also Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, Nashville just hired one last year. Bloomington, Indiana, Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C., and New York City. So isn't that kind of crazy? Iowa City has a position like this. And for reference, like I was saying earlier, we just have such a dense concentration of cultural and entertainment venues, bars, restaurants, that all need a little nudge and encouragement and a little hand-holding at times and giving them the proper tools and resources that they need to do what they need to do. So the nighttime management, nighttime economy movement is really about driving home the point that nighttime, the things that happen at nighttime can be managed. They're not a nuisance. They're the reason why you move to a community. What you go out and you're done with your job or you're done with school, the reason you move to or stay in this community are those things that we call the social economy. So the things that drive what you're doing afterwards. And that's why we need to understand that nighttime is an asset and also have someone that helps bridge the gap to those people who make those decisions that impact those nightlife businesses. So, what are the things that I have in common with other nighttime mayors in the United States? So, I help gain a consensus about what is the kind of state of play in our downtown. I help to kind of just lock that in the back of my head, and as I'm walking, meeting new people, having conversations with our city councilors, county officials, state officials, alcohol beverage division, they're issuing licenses, any of the types of interactions like those, I'm trying to think about things I've already heard, maybe pinch points, areas of concern from our businesses and communicate those. So collectively, we have over 30 plus liquor licenses in our downtown. We have over 80 food and beverage options in our downtown. So kind of holding that all for them and then sharing that out as I come across those people who make those decisions. Also helping share out information and training that happens. Like for instance, I host a monthly bar and restaurant forum with our food and beverage establishments. Last month we had our fire marshal come on and talked about watch out coming this spring. I'm coming through, I'm doing checklists about all your code enforcement, your occupancy, your vent hoods, and so helping share out, here's the checklist the fire marshal is looking for, help you get prepared. We don't want to come at them in a punitive sense. I'm not here, I'm not the enforcement. I'm just here to communicate, hey, you know what would be really easier for you and less headache for you if you just do what's asked of you in the eyes of the law. Here are those things. So it's not just that they walk into your business one day and you're totally, which they shouldn't be totally unexpected. They should know these things, but to help drive those points home. So things like that, especially also during the pandemic about the constant changing of serving rules and distancing. And, you know, we would be hearing, the governor's going to talk at 5 p.m. What's the new announcement? So everyone goes to their TV, and you're like, okay, now we have to share this out with our businesses immediately, and it's effective the next day at 7 a.m., trying to walk them through, and you know, reaching out to, you know, the governor would announce it, but it's really coming from public health as guidance, so then we have to like get on the phone with public health. You know, this is after 5 p.m., so they're like not there, but I have their cell phone number, and so I said, how are we supposed to interpret this? Like, what can we share with them? What does that mean? Are there going to be fines if they don't do it like that? Just helping share that information in that sense. So like I said, intermediary, along with that, during the pandemic, when we did have public health, that was the enforcement arm of you know, what they're doing wrong, ways that it can be solved immediately on the spot, and trying to make sure that before it gets to a boiling point or a fine or a fee, that they're how they're supposed to operate. And then again, just a conduit of information between all agencies that support or interact with our nightlife. I'll get into the whole list of agencies I interface with, but you know, something you don't think about is like garbage removal, and maybe the garbage that didn't get removed the previous day, and then it kind of builds up in our alleys and our walkway spaces and blows through downtown, and trying to like talk about, well, whose trash is that? Whose cups are those? And trying to figure those things out. All right, so we have a lot of differences though with me and other nighttime mayors in the United States. So I work for the Iowa City Downtown District, which is in the state of Iowa what we call a self-supporting municipal improvement district. It's a huge mouthful. What they call it in every other state in the United States is a business improvement district. I kid you not, that's the only state that says that. It's the same exact function. So how it works is we have a set boundary, and we have a tax levy on property valuations in that set boundary. We use that tax levy to fund our organization. So we call it a SMID, everywhere else calls it a BID. And our onus is to support those property owners. That's our main call to action. So I'm working for those people in the designated tax area, whereas in other municipalities and other nighttime mayors in the United States, they're working for the whole city of wherever they're hired at. Again, I'm not the enforcement. I do have colleagues such as the city of San Francisco has a sound management office, and so does the city of Austin, where they have a whole crew under them that will investigate noise management problems. It's not a nuisance problem. We're talking about management, right? It's noise management. So they'll come in with their decibel readers. Hey, we have a complaint from the 311 line, which is a hosted line that any citizen can call into. You're playing music too loud in your venue. Have you done noise abatement? Have you considered this? Have you considered talking to your neighbor who is calling in those complaints? Things like that. But there are nighttime mayors or nighttime managers who do have a little bit of an enforcement arm. I do not. Here's some other examples of what other colleagues are doing around the United States, and I'll kind of mention what I'm pushing on right now. So in New York City, so they have a complaint line, and the issue with their complaint line was that anybody and everybody could call in, and a complaint had the same weight as the next complaint, and they would just dogpile onto a certain business and call, and then they would come into that business and try to shut them down. So the nighttime manager in New York City, her name's Ariel, she's a really lovely lady. She restructured it to have it where you have to come to the table with your neighbor who called a complaint on you. So you have to show up, you have to talk about what your pinch points and gripes are, you have to be honest, you can't just call to complain. You have to work it out as neighbors. Because when you think about moving into areas that are dense and packed with nightlife, most likely that venue that was already there 30, 40 years, 50 years, way before you moved into your apartment or condominium. So thinking about, well, I like to live in a lively city, surprise, there is some noise. You need to bear down and get prepared for that. And so talking about things like, should the landlord then maybe look into doing noise abatement for their apartment complex? Are there certain times that they don't need to have amplified music? And working that out in a civil manner where no one has power over the other. The city of San Francisco, so kind of piggybacking off of the one that I talked about with the example in New York, so the city of San Francisco created a policy called the Agent of Change. And so I'm sure you've probably read in the news, San Francisco in the last 20 years, bustling, developing, overdeveloping, everyone's getting priced out, brand new like shiny glass buildings everywhere, condos, apartments. Well, these people who moved into these condos and apartments, which are in the heart of downtown San Francisco, are surprised when they hear the noise of the city that they moved into. And so San Francisco established a policy through their nightlife office where it says, who was here first? Okay, you just built new, you are responsible now to mitigate that noise. That is not the problem of the neighbor you built next to. Another one, the city of Seattle created a new operator guide, so people who would show up and go through the permit office, and they would walk them through all the, it was like a 20-page packet of like, here are the things you need to know as a nightlife operator, licensing, liquor licensing, sound licensing, what their code is for what they can expect from inspections, basically getting people prepared. So while Seattle is very much like a city of music, it was a lot of people with a lot of money who didn't know how to be a good operator. So they're putting that together and getting them prepared for those things. The city of Orlando, so who's ever taken an Uber or like a Lyft, a ride share? So in the city of Orlando, they had this issue where at the close of bar time, 2, 3 a.m. in Orlando, all the Ubers would just congest the street. And you couldn't get emergency service vehicles through. You couldn't get anybody through. It was just a traffic jam. So the city of Orlando, their nightlife office, then created the city had a lot that they already owned in the downtown, and they told Uber and Lyft, these centralized rideshare pickups, when someone hails you in downtown, everybody has to go to the parking lot. Nobody's being picked up on the street, keeps the streets open for emergency vehicles, so the nightlife is being managed. So one thing I'm working on, again, I'm not the enforcement, but talking to our city and our housing and inspections person at the city of Iowa City, there is no policy for a landlord that is required for them to disclose to their tenant, you've just moved into a place that has a lot of noise. So what we're experiencing now, and it's just kind of the slow drip, it's going to be more and more as downtown develops and gets denser, as we have on the pedestrian mall, there's that new development, the 10-story tower, the Nest. We've had several residents complain to the city, try to get out of their leases. The landlords don't want to let them out of the leases. So we're pushing the people at housing and inspections at the city said, oh, that'd be really easy to put in our new housing code. So, wish me luck. That is something I'm working on. But yeah, so these are examples of things that we do here in nightlife. So back to our differences. Again, I work for an improvement district, so I'm bound by some other things that I have to do in my job besides just liaison. So at the Iowa City Downtown District, our big main drivers are welcome, shape, and draw. So we welcome everybody to downtown, whether you're a new business, a visitor, a student. We shape the conversations that happen in downtown, meaning that we are in on those conversations before they become decisions or reality. We help try to inform people about their decisions to come to downtown, their decisions about development in downtown. Ultimately, it's their choice, but we are there to provide some context of what it means to do business, to be in downtown. And then we draw. Not drawing, but like we bring people in with events. So we have placemaking, we have signature events that we do. If you maybe noticed in the news, right now during this month we have some giant inflatable rabbits in our downtown. So that is us drawing you in, come downtown, look at this ridiculous 2-story rabbit. So those are things that we do as well. And that kind of filters into my work because I'm here to also cultivate, promote, and sustain our arts and nightlife culture. So things that we do, again, signature events like Taste of Iowa City, placemaking, we bring out the giant Iowa City letters for little photo opportunities. More examples of placemaking, this is on the north side of downtown. We close a street every spring on North Lynn Street from April to October. Put some patio furniture out there, paint a mural. You can be served at a table from those restaurants like Goosetown, Webster, places like that. Other things that the Iowa City Downtown District does, other art installations. Another signature event of ours, the Block Party. Public art, things like painted benches, murals on walls. There are a lot of unofficial murals in the city of Iowa City. We can say 24 of them are either ours that we have helped pay an artist or muralist to do, or a private business has commissioned. But there are some other pieces of art out there that are enjoyable that just aren't official, but that's okay too. So things that I work on besides what I just told you about liaisoning. So some programs that I work on are driven by our community in nightlife. So things that they ask me to do, things they've asked Iowa City Downtown District to do. I know this seems weird, I'll explain that photo in a moment. So things like having a late night employee recognition program. It's really hard to retain employees, especially in a college town, especially in nightlife. So what are some ways or tools that we can raise up our kind of shining stars in nightlife and make sure that they feel welcomed, appreciated, that they want to stay. So we launched that for them. That's in the top left there. Bottom left there, so I help facilitate, I help coordinate a training program that we run for our late night bars. So this is a program called Raise the Bar. It's run by RVAP, which is the Rape Victim Advocacy Program, and this helps our late night staff in our bars, when alcohol is a factor, know those bystander intervention techniques. So when somebody might spike a drink, when somebody comes in with their friends and leaves with a stranger, helping those bar staff recognize those symptoms before it becomes a major issue or a place of harm, and making them feel comfortable to intercede on that customer's behalf. Because that's a major component of our nightlife. We want it to be clean, safe, vibrant. And so helping get those trainings facilitated or coordinated for our downtown staff is really important. Next up, so out of the pandemic, downtown is a very old place. We have 100-year-old buildings plus, not a lot of new things. So for us to compete with new and upcoming areas in our city, they're all new build-outs. They all look nice and shiny. What we found through an article I read about, it was called Women in Nightlife, and this doesn't go for just women, but A woman is usually the decider of where you're going in nightlife, where you're going out for the evening. Some of those factors, though, are how cleanly is your bathroom? What's the impression of the bathroom? If it looks like I'm about to be murdered in that bathroom, we're not going there. So we, as a way for economic recovery, but also a way that the impression of these businesses are downtown, and that's an impression on us as the Iowa City Downtown District. So we did a 50-50 matching grant program to renovate their bathrooms. This one is at El Rey's Live and Dive, but a way to signal not only is it someplace that is kept clean, but it's also a safe space. You can just visually looking between the two, you can see which one you'd rather go to, ladies. So that's a program that we ran 2 years ago, and these programs can be very ad hoc. So we at this time won't do another run of this, but maybe in the future, if the businesses ask, we'll do another grant matching program for them. Other things, when we have football games, we have an extra 30,000 people in our city, and especially in our downtown, and maybe there's not a restroom for all of them. So I am responsible to bring in 6 porta potties, put them into our alleys from Friday to Sunday on a Hawkeye home game, and that one alleviates the business, alleviates that person from maybe getting a ticket or being charged for something else, and then keeps our downtown clean as well. And then lastly, another new project that I'm working on with the University of Iowa is it's a program that coincides with the University of Iowa's alcohol harm reduction program. And this is what they call protective environments. So these are places that their students inhabit. So downtown is a place that their students inhabit. Campus is a place that students inhabit, even their sports venues. How do they make sure that they're mitigating the risk of harm or managing what could possibly happen? So there's this concept called CPTED, which is CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. So that is things like lighting, that is things like nooks and crannies that don't need to be open to the public, that can be restricted, fenced. So we recently, in November, and we're still working on it, walked through our downtown, up and down every street, through every alley with myself, a couple people from Student Wellness, a couple of the leaders from fraternity and sorority life, and just documented all the places and plotted points about where are some areas that we could approach either the city, if they're the property owner, a private property owner, and say, hey, we notice, combined with just what we see visually, and we have public safety data for what they call calls for service. Like, we know in this area there's been, over the past 5 years, X amount of people who've called for public safety or police because they've been assaulted. So in a heat map sense, we're trying to find a place, you know, the light's out over here, it's a really easy fix, you can fix a bulb, or in this case, this person already fixed this. So if you're familiar, this is on Dubuque Street. So this is between Raygun and Witch on Dubuque Street, and this is a corridor that their employees have to go into to dump their trash. It is probably 40 feet deep. And so the owners of Witch, they had a little awning, and they had some light bulbs hanging from the awning. They just went ahead, got another set of light bulbs, ran it all the way down the corridor. It's a shared space. They're back there, Jimmy John's is back there, Raygun is back there. There's other businesses that also benefit from this space. So things like that. So it's very nascent at this time. We're trying to figure out how we approach these owners, but that's a project that I'm working on as a way that we can help manage the nightlife. Okay, so back to cultivating, sustaining, promoting arts and nightlife culture. So if you ever see our Icy Eats food guide, I'm the person who helps to revise that and get it reprinted. If you ever received a downtown gift card, I'm the person who processes those orders and makes sure that our merchants are up to speed about taking those cards for a form of payment. If you ever go to downtowniowacity.com/events, I'm the person who loads all the events on our event calendar. Other ways that I help promote and cultivate and sustain our arts and nightlife culture. So we have about 5 or 6 music venues in our downtown. there's always a lot of people coming and going, and it's hard to know, well, what's their sound? What do they sound like? Should I go check out this show? So I just sample a song from every person who's playing in downtown in our current month, and we park it on a playlist that anyone can play from our website. You don't have to have a subscription, but you can play it, figure out, do I like this band? Do I like this artist? I think I'll go check them out. So it's a free way for you to know, and then the idea is to get you out and come downtown. And then up here in the top left, just social media, Twitter and Instagram, kind of showing what the day-to-day is in nightlife and what it's like. All right, so if I didn't cover the rest of them, here are all the other, that I can remember, all the other things that I interface with. I won't read them off to you, except maybe the bottom ones are hard to read. So like streets department, so when we have construction or street closures, or the very popular Thursday street sweeper, or the snow removal, and so trying to communicate to our late night bars, if your employee is parked on the street tonight, it will get towed. Please tell your employees not to park on the street this evening. Anybody who wants to do a public event in our downtown, they usually come through our office, and we give them best practices and ideas about running their event and direct them where they need to go to the city to put in their permit. Another big one that I'm actually working on with community. Community is our community crisis is their name. They also help run Table to Table in the food pantry. So social services, we're trying to communicate the free services that we have here available to any resident, any citizen. So for instance, just in 2020, we opened a place called the GuideLink Center here in Johnson County. And not a lot of people know what the GuideLink Center is. GuideLink Center offers counseling, free sobering unit. It is a way to divert people from going to what they would call the drunk tank. I think a lot of people make some mistakes in nightlife, and this is a way for them to not have something on their record. As long as they are not combative and they're agreeable, it's a way for them to go be in a safe space. Even their friend could come with them and monitor them overnight. And they also do rehabilitation services for drug and alcohol abuse as well, free to citizens. But it's hard to communicate that because it kind of got buried in the pandemic, and people don't know we have those type of services available. So we're trying to share that message. I will take any questions. I hope I covered everything. I know it's kind of a lot to take in, but again, I'm not an elected official. I do know the real mayor. We're really good friends. We're all good on that level. I will note other colleagues of mine in the United States. The reason they don't have the term mayor in their title, some of them have executive and nightlife management, because their mayor explicitly came to their office and says you are not allowed to use that term. So we're good here in Iowa City, but I'll take any questions anyone has.
Joe, would you define what the downtown district is?
Sure. South of Burlington Street and go down Gilbert, where there's places like Casa Azul, The Vine, Sam's Pizza. That is not in our district. But for you, the citizen, it seems like it's downtown. It is downtown, but it's just not in the Iowa City downtown district. So Burlington is our south border. Our most northern border is Bloomington Street over by Polly Ice Pizza. Our most west border is Clinton Street, which runs by the old Capitol. And our most east border is Gilbert Street, which runs by City Hall, the Chauncey, places like that. Yeah.
What hours do you work?
Well, that depends. So like I was saying earlier.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Yes, thank you. So what hours do I keep? So that depends. There are certain times where I need to go out and observe a certain thing that's happening in nightlife. There are other times where if I'm looking to stop in and talk to a certain manager or owner, I know their hours and I will go out in nightlife and meet up with them. But a lot of the decisions that are made for these people happen in 9 to 5 settings. So there are times where I'm out until 11, midnight, 1, and then I have to turn around and go into like a university meeting at 8:30 in the morning. So it just varies. when I am out in nightlife, it's usually just very casual observation. I think there's only one time where we had somebody digging through all the all the recycling in downtown and digging out cans, but then just not putting the trash back. And so starting with hey, did you know that technically this is littering, and I understand you're trying to collect the cans for the redemption, but could you please put them back in the recycling bin? They told me to kindly, so then we had to escalate it from there to our public safety department, but there are things like that I have to go do, yes. Mm-hmm.
What's your normal interaction with public safety?
What's my normal interaction with public safety? It could be a case-by-case basis, but they're also invited to our monthly bar and restaurant forum. This is a moment for them to help share observations that they've been having in nightlife, pinch points, problems. This is also an opportunity for our bars and restaurants to communicate maybe areas that they, in their patrol, are blind to, people that they need to be aware of, issues that they need to be aware of. So it sometimes might be a case-by-case basis where I will communicate with the night sergeant and just say, hey, heads up, this is happening. Can you, on your patrol, check that out? And there are other times where our community will just share that with them. Yes, miss?
Yeah, is there a professional organization that you belong to?
Yes. Is there a professional organization I belong to? So funny you should ask that, and I totally forgot to mention this. So because we're such a newly formed, the idea of nighttime management here in the United States is so new, myself and the other nighttime managers of the United States decided that we would found a nonprofit. And this would be a landing pad for all newly hired nighttime managers and management, and also a resource for cities that are thinking about hiring a nighttime manager or nighttime management. So that organization is called NITECAP, NITEKAP. The website is night-cap.org. But we just founded that a year and a half ago. And so that's just a way for us to help share out why it's so important to have nightlife management here in the United States. And then also when we start seeing newly hired appointees in nightlife in other cities, we reach out to them and say that we're here. Because a lot of times a city will hire you and say, you probably know what you're doing. Push them right out the door. It's kind of, I know there's people in this room who are like, night mayor, what is that? It's very new. So I think some cities just want to be, we did it, we hired them, and they should figure it out. And that's why we're here. Yes?
Do you have any businesses that are non-cooperative and don't want anything to do with you?
Yes. Are there businesses that are non-cooperative or don't want anything to do with me or the Iowa City Downtown District? Yes. We have people that are in the business practice for 20, 30 years. They don't need any help from us. They know what they're doing. They've been very successful at it. There are people who got a really cool idea in their head. They just signed a lease in downtown. They know exactly what they're doing, and they usually don't last long. So there is the people who are doing it well that don't need our help. The people who are doing it wrong who don't need our help usually don't last that long. So we definitely make an effort when we know, when we talk to a landlord and they say, hey, I signed a new lease with somebody, we ask them, could they stop by our office because we would like to talk about what we can do for them as an operator, and then give them some mild suggestion or direction, but ultimately that choice is theirs.
I doubt that you'll see many of us downtown at 10 at night, but when is nighttime over?
You know, I know when nighttime starts. When is nighttime over? So when the sun comes up, really, because there are, here in Iowa City, our nighttime winds down and bar close. There are places in other municipalities where it can go on until 6 a.m. The sun's coming up. But I would say here, about 2 o'clock-ish. Yeah. Yes?
You're funded through a property tax that has been put on the property owners and businesses
Yes.
To be renewed?
Yes, so the question was, we have a taxable levy, is there a statute of limitations for how long we can impose that levy? Luckily, we did get prior authorization from our members in 2019 to continue through 2024. So we have to go up for renewal in 2024. You need 60% of all property owners to approve your extension. When we, along with 2019, when we extended our organization, we also asked, are we allowed in the future to increase your levy by 50 cents? Which they said yes in 2019. We haven't had to use it until this coming year, so this coming July, it will go up to a levy of $2.50 for every 1,000. But we've already been pre-approved from our our property owners. We did though, when we decided to go to the city and say we would like the levy raise, we did reach out to our members again and say, what do you want us to do with that extra money? So we organizationally, and then just the cost of doing business was weighing on us, but also there was gonna be extra money for us to figure out what type of programs and things can we do for you. So yes, we'll be up for renewal in 2024. Seems like it's a positive thing, so most likely we'll keep on going. Yes, sir.
Property owners are not just businesses like venues, but also residences?
Yes, there are residents who live in our downtown who own the buildings, but ultimately it's up to the building owners. So while we do have about a little shy of 3,000 people living in our downtown, when we go up for renewal, we like to talk to the property owner, but that does not limit us to hearing feedback from people who are tenants or residents, because we appreciate their feedback as well. Because ultimately that goes back up, you know, if someone signed a lease and they have a problem with us, that will go back up to the property owner and back to us.
What portion of the money coming in is from businesses versus residences, roughly?
Well, let me correct what I said earlier. So we have a lot of mixed use properties that house residents that we can tax on, but if it's a purely residential designation, we do not. So we do.
Condos downtown.
If they're in a mixed use property, yes. But if they are purely there's no businesses in them, then no.
I was going to ask what percentage of your businesses and residents actually participate in the program, or is it something you join, or you just, how is that handled?
Sure. She asked what percentage of our businesses participate in our program or our organization. When you sign a lease in downtown, you're automatically a member of the Iowa City Downtown District. What is really popular here in downtown for rentals is what they call a triple net lease. Pretty much all property owners do it. So all your taxes, utilities, improvements are passed on to you, the tenant. So de facto, you are really paying it, even though we do have to talk to your property owner. Your property owner has passed on that levy to you. I would say engagement-wise, we have really good engagement with our retailers. We hold a retail caucus with them monthly. Good engagement with our bars and restaurants, our cultural venues. But again, like what I was saying earlier, there's some people who want nothing to do with us and they just want to stay in their lane. Sir?
I wonder if you'd share some of the stories and so forth in regard to some of your experiences downtown, the scariest, the funniest.
There was a gentleman a couple months ago, no, this was a year ago, came through downtown with a unicycle, but he also had like something that looked like a really small shepherding dog on his shoulder, just perched and riding a unicycle, and I didn't know how he was doing it, but it was, I mean, Iowa City kind of has those quirky people who are always passing through it, and everyone just stops and they're just like, there's a guy on a unicycle with looks like a small dog on his shoulder, and he just keeps on going like this is his normal life, which I can appreciate. There's always different types of characters that are coming to town, so yeah. Sure. So like I said, when we talk about our strategic initiative to shape and be in on those conversations, ultimately the city has plans. They usually have them in a 5-year plan called a CIP, which dictates the projects that are coming up in the future years. For comparison with other Iowa communities, we specifically just in the downtown area are one of the most walkable communities in the state of Iowa. Could be more improvement for national, but I would be open to a suggestion that we could pass along.
Well, the suggestion I have is that in the evening at 5 o'clock, close Washington between Clinton and Gilbert, or maybe Lynn, and close, Dubuque Street up to at least Iowa Avenue to vehicle traffic. Just no vehicles. People can walk anywhere in that whole area for the whole evening that they're down there.
There is something similar coming. So they're renovating Dubuque Street not this spring, but next spring. And currently, as the plan stands, there's going to be these retractable bollards, so those concrete barriers that could come up and close Dubuque Street where you wouldn't need a road closed signage. Washington Street, though, because of our city receives federal funds for their transportation infrastructure, Washington Street is a main thoroughfare for their buses. So they would never close Washington on a permanent basis like that. Festivals and one-offs on Saturdays, yes. But Dubuque Street might be closing, if the plan stays, it would have the flexibility where the bollards could come up from the street and then we could close it.
What about closing the streets to cars, private cars, but leave it open for the buses?
I'll have to run that by the city manager, Jeff Fruin, when we see him next. I'm sure he's probably seen it. You said they do it in Madison? Interesting. Okay, and it's just public transportation going through there? Can I ask how do they manage pedestrians not getting like pancaked by a bus? Like is there still stoplights? Is there still stoplights going when they close the street to private cars, but they still have the public transportation?
Well, that would have to be worked out.
Sure. Yeah, everything has to be managed. Yeah. I always like to say we have tons of business owners and people. We're taking in suggestions, and we just have to think about how can those things be managed. But I will share that next time we see our city manager, Jeff, which my boss, Nancy Bird, usually has a standing meeting with him. So, thank you. Any other questions?
How long have you been?
I have been in this role for coming up on 4 years this May. I'm actually the second in this position. So previously, when they founded this position in 2017, it was part-time. And that person had a full-on daytime job, and then their hours got really crazy, and they went on to pursue other opportunities. So when they decided to rehire, they made it a full-time position, and I'll be coming up on 4 years. Mm-hmm.
Would you say during the last several years that downtown at night has become more or less safe?
That's a good question.
I would say more. I think what is hard to sift through is this nation's problem with how easy it is to get your hands on firearms. And I think what maybe you're hinting at is, there was a shooting in our pedestrian mall a couple months ago, and the summer before that. When talking to our public safety department and hearing their statistics about how many people they have confiscated firearms from, and their statistics year over year, that is improving. Their amount of shooting or when a firearm is discharged, that's part of their statistics in our city, that is declining. but what is hard to, for me to, and anybody in our organization to kind of drive that conversation is that it's something you want to read. When you hear it, you want to read it, you want to click it, and you think, is this what's happening all the time in downtown? When we want to share a story of, hey, we're having some rabbits in downtown, and we sent out press releases. Some of the news organizations didn't pick it up. KWWL was down there. I didn't see CBS or Fox. But when there's a shooting, everybody's like, let's run it. Because people are going to read it, going to click on it, it's going to be everywhere. So it's unfortunate that we have to constantly just push out that message. So I would say safer, and also besides the firearm piece, just the amount of control that we now have on alcohol. If you previously remember Iowa City, a little over 10 years ago, you could be 19 or older to be in a bar after 10 p.m., which then created a lot of shoulder tapping for beers, people who were taking their evening from 0 to 10 immediately, drunkenly passing out in planter beds on the street. Not to say that doesn't still happen, but to that extent where the patrol of our public safety had to be larger than it is today.
But I think it's important to market safety to a group that's older than student age. To say this is a safe, comfortable place at night, and here's what we've done to make it that way.
Absolutely, and people in our we have data that shows where people are visiting from, and this postal zip code is our number 2, followed by 52240. And so thinking about taking in feedback like that and knowing what's important to every type of person who comes to downtown is important to us, and hearing those things. So thank you. I think we kind of already knew that internally, but hearing it out loud and talking through that's helpful.
Well, and on a really positive note.
Sure.
It was a wonderful surprise last week in the midst of that 20-mile-per-hour wind that drove the temperatures down to -20 to see those rabbits.
Oh, thank you.
It made me
Yeah.
smile, the rabbits.
Yeah, we are very happy to have those rabbits in downtown. So for those of you that haven't seen it, this is another placemaking initiative that we've done. So this is a art installation rental. So this studio that made these rabbits is based out of Australia, and we wanted something that would be activating the pedestrian mall during the slower winter months, but also something that's just what is that? And draw people in. So when it was windy, we did have to take the really tall, there's one that's nearly 2.5 stories tall that goes like this, and it's a little too tall, and even though it has tie downs, we had to deflate it for that day, because it was doing one of these numbers. So, thank you, we appreciate that. So I think if we don't have any more questions, we'll wrap it up on a positive note. Yeah, thank you for having me today.